Hi, welcome to episode 4 of Cracking the Codex Admech. This is the Cohort Cybernetica. If you're interested in big stompy robots, this is the place for you. I'm Ed, and I'm joined as always by John Scrivens. How are you doing today, John?
I am doing great. I am a great kind of fan of the Castellan robot, so
Hmm.
not seeing them in a lot of AdMech lists for the last couple of years has made me quite sad, but also
Yes.
glad because when they were good, they were horrible because they used to shoot back and it was not fun.
Yeah, I do remember them with a little bit of PTSD. I do really enjoy the sort of like 1940s, 1950s space age aesthetic that they have. So glad to see them on the table again. What do you get from Cohort Cybernetica? Well, you get CyberSAM programming. This is exciting. Your Legio Cybernetica models gain the Doctorate Imperative rules. That's right, your faction trait is 2 units in the army. That is the Datasmith and the Castellan robots. They gain the army rule that the rest of your army gets. Isn't that great, John?
It's a little frustrating, but at least it then gives them some actual play around with those imperatives, which isn't something to be sniffed at, I suppose.
Yeah, my biggest complaint about AdMech as a faction across the entire time since I came back to the hobby in 8th edition has been that needlessly the faction is split up into the haves and haves nots, and they write rules that only affect certain sections without it really making sense from a game balance perspective, I
Yeah,
feel.
it's
Um,
always narrative led, which isn't always the best way to write games rules.
sure, you've got campaign,
Yeah.
Crusade campaign books, so they could put that sort of stuff in there. However, they do get the rules now. So, just as a refresher, what that means is you choose at the start of the battle round one Doctrina Imperative to apply to the entire army, and this time it is the entire army because you've got it on your Castellan robots. You either take the Protector Imperative, which gives your ranged weapons heavy, and when you are in your deployment zone, you get Armor of Contempt effectively. All attacks coming at you, all ranged attacks coming at you, are at -1 AP. One less AP, I should say, to clarify. Or there's the Conqueror Imperative, which gives your ranged weapons the assault ability. And when you make a ranged attack against an enemy unit that's in your opponent's deployment zone, improve the AP of one. So it's a defensive or an offensive buff. In this case, I really like the Protector Imperative. The reason I really like that is you've got Castellan robots that have a 2-up save natively, and it's quite easy to get cover in this game. So you don't want to start your robots behind walls. They don't walk through walls. You do have to walk around them, which means you probably want to deploy them on the line. Maybe you hide one so you can start taking saves and cover. But you effectively have a 2-up save against anything AP2, and you'll have a 3-up save against anything AP3. So it means that you can deploy your models so that you can push out onto the board, actually play the game, but not lose models too
Yeah.
much before you get a chance to do anything with them. So, stratagems. This is a pretty good suite of stratagems, I think, actually. There are 3 battle tactics. As always, you're not going to be getting free stratagems or really repeating stratagems with this detachment, but there are some that can be increased by enemy models like the Caladius Assassin. Starting off, we've got Motive Imperative. In your command phase, you select one AdMech vehicle unit from your army, and it is a unit, not just single model. Until the start of your next command phase, add 3 inches to the move characteristic of models in the unit, and +1 to the advance and charge rolls made from it. This is quite nice. The obvious use here is on the Sidonian Dragoons with Taser Goads. This effectively gives them +5 inches if they're moving, advancing, and charging.
Yeah.
It's also quite nice just to slap on a big brick of robots,
Yep.
giving them a 9-inch move, or if you're looking to try and get aggressive with them, either if you've given them assault weapons for a turn, which can be done with the Transcendent Conjugation stratagem we'll get to in a second, or if you're looking to charge aggressively, it gives you a good extra chunk of movement on what's quite a slow and unwieldy unit. Finally, on the battle tactics, we've got the Benevolence of the Omnissiah. This is 1 CP as well. Key to note, all of these are 1 CP, which is nice because this is quite a toolbox of stratagems. So keeping that sort of 1 or 2 CP available to be able to use any of the stratagems is always a good place to be in. So the way the Benevolence of the Omnissiah works is in your command phase, you select one Legio Cybernetica or AdMech vehicle unit from your army, and until the start of the next command phase, you get a 6-up Feel No Pain, which is improved to a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds. Not dev wounds. We will see if that gets changed in the data slate that'll be coming in the next few days.
Yes.
However, just a feel no pain is very valuable on big bulky models, and being able to have some defense against something like the Thousand Sun Smites is very valuable in an army that's really leaning on armor saves and invulnerable saves as well. On to the other stratagems, we've got Machine Spirit Resurgent for 1 CP. Again, it's a Legio Cybernetica or AdMech vehicle that's below starting strength this time that you select in your command phase. And until the start of the next command phase, each time a model in that unit makes attack, you can reroll the hit roll. And if it's below half strength, you can reroll the wound roll as well. I'm not jazzed about this.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a stratagem you can only use when you're below starting strength, I don't feel good about.
And this one, I remember when we were chatting to Jack during our initial AdMech review. So when you're below half starting strength, you're a unit
Yeah.
of 4 robots with a datasmith. That means you need to have lost 3 models.
Yes, which
Not
is
so great. It's a shame.
no. I will say, in this detachment, if you're running bricks of 4 Castellan robots, it's not awful to use if you've lost 1. Getting the full rerolls to hit is quite nice, but I'm just never excited about a strat that you have to have lost models to use. Perhaps if it was reroll hit rolls, if you're below starting strength, you can reroll wound rolls.
Yeah.
Maybe that ends up being too good, or you adjust it to 2 CP. But I think that's a lot more interesting, because by the time you're getting the reroll wound rolls, which is the really sort of exciting part of the stratagem, you're
Yeah.
down to a very underwhelming number of shots, 1 model's worth of shooting effectively. If you are running any single vehicle model units, being below half strength is obviously it's not easy for you to set up, but it is more useful because you haven't lost really any output when that comes through. Then we've got Machine Superiority. This is your command phase, Cybernetica or vehicle unit as well. It gives your unit fall back and shoot, and you can ignore all modifiers to its characteristics and rolls or tests made apart from saving throws. So this is quite nice if your opponent is leaning on negatives to hit. If you are running a vehicle, and you're down to the bracketed step and you're falling back, there's a lot packed into one stratagem here. You're mostly going to be using it for, fall back and shoot, but having the extra riders on there is quite valuable. Finally, stratagem-wise, we've got the Transcendent Cogitation. This is, again, your command phase. You pick a Cybernetica or vehicle unit, and you get the Conqueror and Protector imperative on
Nice.
that unit. This is less about having both active and more about getting the one that you didn't pick at the start of the battle, because obviously you'll have the other one active already. But if you've got the CP for it, for example, being able to motive imperative and transcendent cogitation. So if you've picked the defensive ability and you want to be able to advance and shoot, and then you combine it with motive imperative for the extra range and the extra range in the advanced roll, it's quite nice there. Quite a flexible stratagem. What I find quite interesting about this, and it's very thematic in the theming, is all of these stratagems you use in your command phase. So it's very much you're programming your army to play in a certain way, which I find quite interesting. Does mean you have to do a little bit of forward planning, but just think about what you do before you do it. It's not
Yeah.
a problem. Stratagem's great. I actually think the suite stratagems are good and quite exciting, thematic, quite strong. Really like them. Enhancements are bad, but that's
Yeah.
fine because the stratagems are really good. So the stratagems that you get here, the enhancements that you get here, I'm not jazzed about any of them, to be honest. Some of them are fine, but
Yeah.
maybe a little expensive for what I want. I think the list that we threw together, John did most of the legwork on. We didn't end up putting any of them in. We just didn't have points for.
No.
You may end up putting 1 or 2 of them in. They're not bad. They're just not compared to the other detachments enhancements. I'm not particularly excited
You
about them.
don't build your list starting with them on specific units to then build around.
Yes, which is absolutely something that you do in some of the other detachments. So, first of all, Necromechanic, 25 points, once per battle round. Whenever a saving throw is made for a Cybernetica or vehicle unit within 12 model, I should say, within 12 inches of the bearer, you can flick the damage characteristic of that attack to 0. This is nice. However, I'm not seeing a lot of stuff, especially now in the meta. I'm not seeing a lot of single shot high damage. There's a lot of sort of mid damage, high volume, or even if it is, there's enough of these sort of shooting to make that one that you've blanked, not super exciting. It's fine, and if I have 25 points, I will put it into the list, and I will be happy when it comes up. But I'm not super jazzed about taking it. Lord of the Machines, 20 points. This is to mess with your opponent's list. However, it's in your opponent's shooting phase, so they get to respond to it by moving their models out of range. It's a very short range ability. So it's you put it on a tech priest model. Once per turn, at the start of your opponent's shooting phase, you select one enemy vehicle unit within 12 inches of and visible to the bearer. That is a lot of hoops to jump through that your opponent can just say, "Oh, I'm just going to move my vehicle back 3 inches." This is an old world. There's no, you don't have to pivot and lose movement. They just, measure backwards, move the unit. Job's a good one. The unit must take a leadership test. If the test is passed until the end of the phase, it is -1 to hit. If the test is failed, the unit is not eligible to shoot this phase. There's so many clarifications and hoops to jump through there that I don't think I'm ever going to put this in my list in a competitive list. Emotionless clarity. Again, tech priest model only. Once per turn, when a friendly Legio Cybernetica or vehicle model with the deadly demise ability within 12 inches is destroyed, you can, instead of rolling, you can just auto explode. This is funny. Maybe this one goes in some lists. I'd have to, look at the data sheets and go, is there sort of some potential to play very aggressively with my units and go out my way to try and explode them? But again, it's your opponent has the agency here. Unless they're playing something like World Eaters, they don't necessarily have to be within 6 inches of you when they're killing the models. So I'm not jazzed about it, and I don't think being able to auto explode within the limited confines of paying for the enhancements beforehand, having it within 12 inches of the model that explodes, I'm not super jazzed about.
It's very situational. They're all like very. If it works,
Yes.
great. But you'll go games where none of the interactions will happen.
If it was a strat, I wouldn't be particularly upset to see it.
Yeah.
But because it's an enhancement, like you've got to buy into it beforehand instead of using it every one in like 4 or 5 games. I'm not impressed. Arch Negator, 10 points. This is the one I feel has the most use, just because it's so cheap. Tech Priest model only. Ranged weapons equipped by that bearer have the anti-vehicle 4+ ability. This potentially goes on Manipulous. It's got a Flamer with Dev Wounds, with damage 2. Maybe you just fish for some, damage 2 Flamer shots, and then it's got a flat 3 damage single shot weapon as well. It's 10 points. If you have 10 points free, you can put this in without too much, not feeling like you've made an inefficient choice.
Exactly.
List then. Please insert girder. This is a fairly, how should I put it? It plays in a very straightforward manner. You want to get into the middle of the board, and you want to use your big bulky units and your fairly impressive damage output. It's very different to yesterday's list where we were talking about the Vanguard abilities and flitting around the board.
Yeah.
This is straightforward. Put my big things in the middle of the table and have a punch up. So there are 2 Cybernetica Datasmiths. Each one goes with the Castellan robot. Key to note in this detachment, you may not have seen them because unless you're playing the Cohort Cybernetica, you're not necessarily seeing the Castellan robots. But the way they work is you pick a buff at the start of the battle, and then you can change it in the command phase, and you either get +1 to your toughness of the robots, so you can take them to toughness 8, or you can add 2 to the attacks of their ranged weapons or melee weapons, which is quite nice because they can have multiple guns, or they can have, for example, twin-linked fists. They each go with a squad of the Castellan robots. The robots are equipped with 1 fist, one of the Castellan phosphor blasters, and then the shoulder-mounted heavy phosphor blaster as well. Just put out a reasonable amount of shots. You've got 2 Tech Priest Manipuluses. They go with the Cataphrone Breaches, give them the lethal hits. Just a staple in every AdMech list at the moment. Very good. Still quite fitting with the theming. You've got big, bulky models that want to put out damage at range and okay in melee. Then we've got some scoring units here. We've got a unit of the Skitarian Infiltrators and 2 squads of the Taraxi Skystalkers who have fire and phase, so they can come down and then move on to an objective or into position as needed. And finally, 2 units of Sidonian Dragoons with Taser Lancers. We didn't have the points to fit any of the big 3 model bricks in. Just having 2 squads of 2 makes them more of a skirmishing unit, but again, there is the strat to give them +3 inch move, +1 to advance and charge, so you can potentially get quite aggressive with the Dragoons quite early on. What were your thoughts when you were putting this list together, John?
It was very much looking at kind of how to approach them just going forward, dealing with whatever they can see, and just being quite honest in how it played. So it would be maybe something that then leans into something like fixed, like potentially just being kind of in the places it's going to be. If it's going into something that it's going to be killing lots of, so say if you went into Chaos Knights, you're just like, right, I'll just go bring it down,
Yeah.
and then maybe using things like the Taraxi and Sakaran just to go and do other annoying things to score passively as well. Because I
Yeah,
never like
it's
just going completely just into the damage, because otherwise you're then just like, cool,
of
what do I
course.
do if I can't hurt them?
It feels like it's a list that plays the teleport homers quite easily as well.
Yeah,
You probably set the Sicarian infiltrators in the midboard behind the ruin, do that all game. You're going to be playing aggressively in the midboard with your 8 robots anyway, so it's not like they're just going to get charged and dealt with.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of play there for fixed. Lovely. Well, thank you for joining us for the big Stompy Robot Detachment. We will be back tomorrow with yet another video.